You're looking for a camera that actually works when the lights dim, the speaker moves around, and you can't afford to spend hours digging through menus, something that just lets you point, click, and let the tech handle the rest. That's the exact dilemma I faced when my church was upgrading its live stream setup. I didn't want a box full of specs that sounded impressive on paper but left me fiddling with focus rings and laggy connections during the sermon. I needed confidence that the camera would stay sharp when Pastor John walked across the stage, that the AI would keep the choir in frame without me constantly readjusting, and that the whole rig would fit into the limited budget we had for the year. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. When I started looking at PTZ options, the Tenveo 4K NDI PTZ camera with its AI humanoid and face auto-tracking caught my eye because it promised exactly that, a 20x optical zoom that still delivers a clean 4K image, plus a joystick controller with a 7-inch quad screen that lets you see 4 camera angles at once. The promise of precision tracking sounded great, but I was skeptical AI can be hit or miss, especially in low-light church sanctuaries where spotlights swing and the audience is often in shadow. After a few weeks of testing, here's what the real-world experience looks like. First off, the initial setup is surprisingly painless. The included IP search tool scans your network and lists the camera's address in seconds, so you're not hunting for IPs or dealing with complex routing. Plug the Ethernet into a PO switch, power up the controller, and the camera appears on the quad screen. The menus are laid out in a way that feels more like a video conferencing app than an industrial camera. You scroll through a handful of tabs for resolution, tracking mode, and network settings, and every option has a short tooltip. I spent less than 10 minutes getting a live feed to my streaming software via NDI, which is a huge time saver compared to the days I spent configuring RTMP keys on other rigs. The AI tracking is the centerpiece, and it actually works. I ran a couple of typical services: the pastor walking from the pulpit to the front row, a worship band moving between instruments, and a speaker who liked to pace. When I activated humanoid mode, the camera locked onto the pastor's torso and kept him centered even as he turned his head to read from notes. Switching to face mode for the worship leader gave a tighter framing that stayed on her face while she sang. The tracking isn't obsessive, it lets you set a dead zone so the camera doesn't jitter with every micromovement, which is something I've seen in cheaper AI cams that end up looking like a shaky camcorder. Low-light performance is where many PTZ cameras stumble, but the Tenveo's 4K sensor holds up decently. In our sanctuary, the main lights are dimmed to 150 lux during the evening service. The camera maintained good detail with minimal noise, especially when I paired the 20 zoom with the wider lens setting for a softer depth of field. It's not a cinema-grade sensor, but for a live stream audience watching on phones and laptops, the image stays clear enough that you can read slides on the screen. If you're planning to shoot in near-dark conditions, say, a candlelit vigil, the AI might lose the face lock, but you can manually switch to a wider aperture and the image still looks usable. Stabilization isn't a concern for a PTZ unit that stays on a tripod, but the motorized pan-tilt head is buttery smooth. I tested rapid panning across the altar and back. The motion was silent enough that it didn't register on the church's ambient mic, which is a relief when you're trying to keep the audio clean. The 20 optical zoom is truly optical, not just digital cropping, so you can zoom in on a speaker at the back without the picture turning mushy. However, the zoom speed is a bit slower than some high-end broadcast rigs. If you need to swing from a wide shot to a close-up in under a second for a fast-moving production, you might feel a half-second lag. For most worship services or conference talks, that delay is barely noticeable. Battery confidence isn't an issue here because the camera runs off PO, which means you can leave it powered for an entire weekend of events without worrying about swapping packs. That's a practical win for venues that already have Ethernet cabling. On the flip side, because it's tethered, you lose the flexibility of moving the camera around the venue without laying cable, so it's not a good fit for pop-up outdoor shoots where you need a handheld solution. Who should buy this? If you're a church, a small production house, or an educational institution that needs a reliable, network-ready camera for multi-camera streaming, the Tenveo kit hits a sweet spot. The built-in AI tracking reduces the need for a dedicated camera operator, which can shrink crew size and costs. The quad-screen controller gives a director-level view.